Okay, so you want to own a cafe. Find a nice storefront. Put some tables by the window. Buy a serious espresso machine. Hire good baristas. Charge $6 for drinks made from coffee, milk, and water. And watch the money roll in. That is the picture. Now imagine the cafe is actually working. Every table's full. There is a line at the counter. The espresso machine has not stopped for 2 hours. Customers keep tapping their cards. From the sidewalk, this looks like exactly the kind of small business people dream about owning. Then, you check the bank account, and the number makes no sense. Because a busy cafe and a profitable cafe are two completely different things. And if you want proof, look at Starbucks. Starbucks has thousands of locations, decades of operating experience, enormous purchasing power, sophisticated technology, and global brand recognition. Yet in the second fiscal quarter of 2026, its North American business generated almost $6.9 billion in revenue and reported an operating margin of just under 10%. Think about that. Billions of dollars moved across the counter, and more than 90 cents of every revenue dollar disappeared before reaching operating profit. Now remove the scale, remove the purchasing power, remove the technology, remove the decades of demand data, and replace all of it with one owner and one location. That is the business you are buying. Because the expensive part of a latte is not necessarily the coffee inside the cup. It is everything that had to be ready before the customer arrived. The barista, the lease, the refrigerator, the electricity, the chairs, the milk that expires tonight, the espresso machine that costs money whether anyone orders or not. You might make a latte in 2 minutes, but the business producing it costs money every minute it exists. That is the central problem of cafe ownership. You are selling small transactions inside a machine with large fixed costs. So the real question is not how many cups you sell. It is how much revenue you can push through every expensive hour, every employee, and every square foot before the opportunity disappears. And that problem begins before you sell your first coffee. You find the perfect storefront. Big windows, busy sidewalk, 25 seats, enough room for a beautiful counter. You sign the lease, and your cafe immediately starts consuming cash. Rent starts, insurance starts, utilities start, equipment starts aging. If you borrowed money to build the store, interest starts accumulating, and you have not sold one coffee. This is where many first-time owners make the wrong calculation. They think the startup cost is the amount required to open the doors. It is not. The real startup cost is the amount required to open the doors and survive long enough for the business to work. You can spend heavily on furniture, counters, and an expensive espresso machine. You can open a cafe that looks perfect and still fail because customers arrive more slowly than your expenses do. Think of it like filling a bathtub while the drain is already open. The build-out buys the bathtub. Working capital determines whether you can fill it faster than the money escapes, and much of the build-out cannot easily be recovered. Plumbing inside the floor, electrical work inside the walls, ventilation, counters built for one room. You can spend a huge amount making somebody else's building useful for your business. And if the cafe fails, the landlord still owns the building. A large part of your initial investment is not buying assets you can easily resell. It is buying the right to begin operating. Then the clock takes over. Take a latte, coffee, milk, maybe syrup, a cup and a lid. Sell it for $6. The ingredients look cheap. And if you stop the calculation there, the business looks incredible. So why are cafe owners not all getting rich? Because the cup does not make itself. Someone takes the order, grinds the coffee, pulls the espresso, steams the milk, finishes the drink, hands it over, cleans the equipment, restocks the station. And here is what changes the math. You are not paying that employee only while the drink is being made. You are paying for the shift. In the United States, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported a median hourly wage of $14.92 for food and beverage, serving and related workers in May 2024, and wages are not the full employer cost. There can also be payroll taxes, workers' compensation, and training. Now imagine the cafe goes quiet for 40 minutes. Nobody orders, coffee stops moving, milk stops moving, but labor keeps moving, rent keeps moving, electricity keeps moving. The most expensive cup of coffee may be the one you never sell. Its ingredients cost nothing. But the capacity you created to serve it still cost money. The employee was there. The machine was on. The room was open. The rent was due. The sales simply never happened. So a cafe does not make money because each latte has a large markup. It makes money when enough high-margin transactions pass through a fixed operating machine fast enough. And that word, enough, creates the next problem. Imagine two cafes. Both sell 200 drinks today. Same prices, similar ingredients, similar rent. You might assume they produce similar profit. They may not. Cafe A sells most of those drinks between 7 in the morning and noon. The owner knows when demand arrives and schedules heavily for the rush. Cafe B gets the same customers spread unpredictably across 12 hours. The owner keeps more labor available because nobody knows when the next rush will arrive. Same revenue, very different labor economics. This is why daily sales can lie. You do not really staff for daily revenue. You staff for the shape of daily revenue. At 7:30, 6 customers can arrive almost simultaneously. At 2:30, the same employees may be staring at an empty room, and demand can hurt you in both directions. Too slowly and labor sits idle. Too quickly and the line grows until customers leave. So more customers are not automatically better. What matters is throughput. How many people can your store turn into completed, paid transactions during the expensive hours when demand exists? Now tiny operational details become financial decisions. Where's the milk refrigerator? How many steps does a barista take? Does one complicated drink block 10 simple orders behind it? A few seconds per order sounds meaningless. Multiply those seconds across hundreds of transactions, then hundreds of operating days. Minutes become capacity. Capacity becomes sales. And one of the biggest profit levers in a cafe may simply be moving more revenue through the same room before the rush disappears. But even a full room can hide another problem. Imagine a customer buys 1 coffee, then opens a laptop. 1 hour passes, then 2, then 3. From the customer's perspective, this is exactly why cafes are valuable. Somewhere to work, meet, read, or sit outside the home. From the owner's perspective, the customer is occupying real estate. Suppose that table could have turned over 4 times during those 3 hours. The laptop customer did nothing wrong. That is not the point. The point is that the cafe is selling 2 products at once: coffee and occupancy. One has a price. The other is often free. And this creates a strange contradiction. A bad cafe has empty seats because nobody wants to stay. A great cafe can have no seats because everybody wants to stay. Neither automatically means the space is productive. That is why seating design becomes financial design. Communal tables allow solo customers to share space. Small tables can be rearranged. Pickup customers can be separated from seated customers. Power outlets influence where laptop users settle. Once you see this, your square footage becomes inventory. But unlike normal inventory, you cannot save it. At midnight, today's unused table hours disappear forever. That makes every chair a tiny, revenue-producing asset with an expiration clock attached. So if attracting another customer is expensive, there is another option. Make the customer already inside worth more. Imagine 2 customers both buy coffee. The first spends $6. The second adds a pastry or breakfast sandwich and spends $11 or $12. The second customer did not require another storefront, another advertising campaign, or another seat. You acquired the visit once, then increased its value. That is why food can change cafe economics. But it creates another problem: waste. Milk expires, sandwiches spoil, pastries have a short selling window. So every morning, the owner makes a forecast. How much milk? How many croissants? How many sandwiches? Order too little, and you lose sales during the rush. Order too much, and your margin ends the day in a trash bag. And demand constantly changes. Monday's not Saturday. Rain is not sunshine. Nearby offices change schedules. Construction changes foot traffic. Competitors open. So almost every strategy that improves profit introduces another operating risk. More menu items can raise the average ticket. They can also slow the bar. More food increases revenue. It also increases waste. The cafe is not a machine with one lever. Pull one lever and 3 others move. And after you balance all of that, another company quietly takes a piece of almost every sale. Payment processing. Federal Reserve data from the 2024 Diary of Consumer. Payment choice showed that more than 3/4 of United States consumers preferred credit or debit cards for in-person payments. That means payment networks sit inside a huge percentage of cafe transactions. Square currently lists an in-person card-present fee on its basic plan of 2.6% plus 15 cents per transaction. Take a $9 sale. The fee is roughly 38 cents. Nothing dramatic until you repeat it. 200 transactions per day, 80% by card, 360 operating days. That produces 57,600 card transactions. At roughly 38 cents each, Processing costs a little over $22,000 in this simplified example. The customer never sees $22,000 disappear. The owner does. And this reveals something important about low-ticket businesses. They are often won and lost through repetition. A few cents of packaging, a few cents of waste, a few cents of processing, a few unnecessary minutes of labor. One mistake is nothing. Repeat it tens of thousands of times, and suddenly it is payroll. And the biggest repeating cost is the one you cannot turn off fast enough: labor. The National Restaurant Association's 2025 operations data showed that among limited service restaurants, salaries and wages, including benefits, represented a median of roughly 32% of sales in 2024. A cafe is not identical to every limited service restaurant, but the number shows the scale. Almost one-third of revenue can disappear into the people required to operate the business. And labor behaves differently from coffee beans. You can order fewer beans next week. You cannot send one-third of a barista home for 20 minutes. Labor comes in blocks, demand comes in bursts. Suppose you cut afternoon staffing. Then 20 customers arrive together. The line grows. Drinks slow down. Customers leave. So next week you add another employee. And the rush never comes. You paid to protect revenue that did not appear. That is why experienced operators obsess over sales by hour. They are trying to buy the correct number of labor hours before knowing exactly how many customers will arrive. And then there is training. A new employee does not instantly perform like an experienced one. Another worker slows down to teach them. Orders take longer. Drinks get remade. Payroll rises while productivity temporarily falls, which means retaining skilled employees is unit economics. A great barista may be one of the most valuable pieces of equipment in the store. Except unlike the espresso machine, they can quit. And if you think this problem disappears with scale, it does not. Go back to Starbucks. In the second fiscal quarter of 2026, its North American segment generated almost $6.9 billion in revenue. Product and distribution costs consumed about 30%. Store operating expenses consumed more than 53%. Depreciation and amortization took another roughly 4%. After the remaining operating expenses, North American operating income was about $680 million. That is enormous in absolute terms, but only around 9.9% of revenue. And Starbucks has everything your first cafe does not: brand recognition, purchasing power, technology, real estate expertise, loyalty, demand data, specialized supply chains. Starbucks even said that during its first fiscal quarter of 2026, peak service times across its cafe and drive-through coffee houses had improved to an average of less than 4 minutes. Why does a company that large care about a few minutes? Because minutes are capacity. If the same store can serve more customers during the same morning rush, it can create more sales without opening another building. No second lease, no second set of walls. That is the midpoint reversal. The biggest opportunity may not be raising the price of coffee. It may be increasing how much useful revenue can pass through the same expensive box. From the customer side, the cafe looks like hospitality. From the owner side, it is throughput engineering. So now, we can finally answer the question from the beginning. What is actually left? Suppose the store averages 200 transactions per day. Average ticket, $9. 360 operating days. Annual sales, $648,000. It sounds like a substantial business. Now watch what happens. The National Restaurant Association found that prime costs, food, beverages, and labor, represented a median of about 65 cents of every sales dollar in the limited service segment. Apply that rough relationship and more. Then $420,000 is already gone. Now occupancy. At roughly 5%, another $30,000+ disappears. Then processing. Using our previous simplified assumptions, another little over $22,000. And we are still not done. Utilities, insurance, accounting, software, repairs, cleaning, marketing, waste, licenses, replacement, equipment, debt service, taxes, and you. Your labor does not become free because you own the business. This is why $648,000 of sales is not $648,000 of income. Revenue tells you how much money passed through the register. It does not tell you how much belonged to you. And in the association's 2025 operating data, limited service restaurants reported median pre-tax income of only about 4% of sales. 4 cents from every dollar. That is not only the profit, that is the margin of error. And when the margin of error is 4 cents, you do not need a disaster to ruin the year. You just need one expensive week. The espresso machine fails. The refrigerator stops overnight. A water leak closes the store. Roadwork blocks the entrance. An experienced employee leaves. Insurance rises. Rent increases. A competitor opens nearby. None of these events is unusual. That is exactly what makes them dangerous. Suppose our $648,000 cafe earns roughly 4% before tax. That is around $26,000. One major repair, several closed days, a staffing problem, some spoiled inventory. $26,000 can disappear very quickly, and the owner may still have worked thousands of hours. This is where people confuse owning a job with owning an asset. If the cafe only works because you personally open it, manage staff, cover shifts, order inventory, and solve every problem, then part of what looks like profit is actually unpaid management labor. There is a simple test. Remove yourself. Hire someone competent to perform everything you do. Pay them market compensation. Then look at what remains. That number is much closer to the economics of ownership. A cafe doing $600,000 in sales sounds impressive. What matters is what survives after everybody gets paid, including you. So how does one cafe ever become a real asset? The answer is repeatability. Suppose the first location works. Now you know the morning rush, the average ticket, the staffing pattern, the food mix, the equipment problems, the purchasing rhythm, the menu items that slow service. The first cafe has produced something valuable. Information, recipes, suppliers, training, systems, schedules, operating procedures. That means a second store does not begin from zero. And some costs can spread across more revenue. One accountant can support multiple stores. One website can support multiple stores. One brand can market several locations. One management system can schedule several teams. Then the business can move beyond the physical room. Packaged beans, office coffee, subscriptions, wholesale. Products customers can buy without occupying one of your chairs. That matters because one cafe has a hard ceiling. Only so many seats, only so many hours, only so much counter space. But a system can travel, a product can travel, a brand can travel, and that is where a location can begin becoming a company. But scale does not fix bad economics. It multiplies them. If one cafe loses money efficiently, 5 cafes give you 5 efficient ways to lose money. The first store has to prove the machine works before you multiply it. Return to the cafe. Tables full, line at the counter, espresso machine running, cards tapping, money moving. At first, that looked like success. Now you know better. A customer can be valuable because they buy coffee and breakfast, or surprisingly expensive because they occupy scarce seating for 3 hours after buying one drink. A $6 latte can have attractive ingredient, economics, while the business around it earns a thin margin. A busy morning can make money. An empty afternoon can give it back. An employee can look expensive while actually producing enormous value because they increase throughput during the exact hour when demand peaks. The economics were never really hidden inside the coffee. They were hidden inside time. How many transactions can your team complete before the rush ends? How much revenue can one customer visit create? How much can 1 square foot produce before today disappears? How accurately can labor follow demand? How much capacity sits idle? And after the landlord, employees, suppliers, processor, utility company, insurer, lender, and government have all been paid, what remains for the person who supplied the capital and accepted the risk? So what are you actually buying when you open a cafe? A fixed amount of space, a fixed number of operating hours, a limited amount of labor capacity, and you are betting that you can repeatedly convert all 3 into transactions faster than rent. Labor, waste, fees, and equipment consume the revenue. The customer sees coffee. The owner sees capacity. The customer sees a comfortable room. The owner sees expensive square footage with a clock running above it. And that is why the best cafe is not necessarily the one with the longest line, or the fullest tables, or even the best coffee. It is the one where the room, the staff, the menu, and the demand all work together before the clock runs out. Because almost everything you are selling expires. The employee hour expires. The empty chair expires. The morning rush expires. The unused square foot expires. And once that hour is gone, you can never sell it again. That is the real economics of owning a cafe. If you want more breakdowns of the hidden economics behind businesses everyone thinks they understand, subscribe.